Let's look at some business news now then on the programme. And Asian markets are kind of fluctuating really as investors take rather a step back after last week's rally. The mood generally still is upbeat though after the China-US trade pact, of course, was signed last week. And the global outlook seems a little bit rosier. We can show you the images up on the board for you, hopefully. Slight dip on Hong Kong there in Hang Seng, but otherwise rises in Tokyo, in Shanghai and on Seoul as well. Focus now is turning to corporate earnings with big names like Netflix, IBM and Hyundai due to report. Well, let's cross live then to Bangkok. We're going to speak to Stephen Innes. He's head market strategist for Asia Pacific at Axitrader. Stephen, thanks very much for being with us as ever. The outlook then, as we're saying, they're still positive. The trade deal, the whole global outlook looking vaguely positive, at least at the moment.
I think the data is supporting that fact. We had fairly upbeat data coming out of China last week. And this week, I think the data counts are a little bit sparse, and this is why investors are taking a step back. We've got a holiday shortened week, lack of economic data. You know, when traders have too much time on their hands, they start focusing on the negative aspects of things. Again, what's going to happen in phase two. And I think this is why we're seeing risk getting pulled back a little bit. We don't have that positive data impulse to drive the market forward. So probably a wait and see until at least Thursday when the U.S. first jobs data comes out, and we'll see how things are sitting out at that spot.
Stephen, we've got a couple of things coming up later this week I mentioned there. We've got some important earnings reports coming out. Also, the European Central Bank releasing its first strategic review in 2 decades, things that obviously you and your colleagues are very much going to be following.
Yeah, you know, corporate America is surprisingly resilient as far as the profit and earnings reports are going. This has really surprised a lot of the market. The big banks have come out very, very robust, and you know, blue chippers are doing quite well. Tech sectors are, you know, as expected, just doing phenomenal. Focus definitely will be shifting to the ECB. It's always a bit of a wild card how the banks are going to respond. We think there's a general growing consensus among global central banks. Where's inflation? I think this could be a focus also of the ECB, where it might keep them a little bit on the dovish side, at least waiting to see where inflation is. If inflation upticks, that might create a move. But until then, I think it's business as usual.
Stephen, thanks very much. Stephen Innes there from Axitrader joining us from Bangkok. Now then, the World Economic Forum is being held this week in Davos, Switzerland, with bushfires raging in Australia, extreme weather and climate change really topping the agenda at the 50th edition of the conference. Fraser Jackson takes a look for us.
Demanding climate action, thousands gathered on the streets of the Swiss town of Lausanne on Friday. Star of the protest, climate activist Greta Thunberg.
You have not seen the last of us, we can assure you that. And that is the message that we will bring to the World Economic Forum in Davos next week.
On the other side of Switzerland, the picturesque mountain resort of Davos. Like every year, the world's political and business elites are descending upon the snow-covered village, but this year, and for its 50th edition, the World Economic Forum is going green.
The meeting will serve to make green investment mainstream and ultimately imperative. It will encourage the engagement of our partners and members to become carbon neutral. And finally, in addition to the commitment to reduce carbon emissions, the restoration of our ecosystems is a priority for this coming decade.
The move comes after the publication of the Forum's annual risk report. For the first time, environmental issues have topped the list of concerns for the business elites and world leaders. Set against the backdrop of the Australian bushfires, extreme weather, biodiversity loss and events like oil spills and radiation contamination were chief worries mentioned. Hoping to push those in power into action, Davos has adopted sustainability as its main theme. The forum is set to launch an initiative this week that aims to plant 1 trillion trees by the end of the decade.
And our business editor, Stephen Carroll, is in Davos this week. He'll bring you all the latest updates live from the forum from tomorrow here on France 24. That's the business then.